Now on this tech deck we've got a spectacular Foley guitar. This is made with like 100-year-old Brazilian rosewood stock. He's a former Martin employee. Just this one, look at his inlay detail. This also has the Maton Australian acoustic electric system in it. There's quite a bit of work to do on this to get it up to 100%. So once again, you know, we got this rock in this area here needs to be corrected. Now luckily we've got enough room in the depth of the inlay and the thickness of the fingerboard to be able to correct this completely. We'll be able to change that trajectory, because right now this saddle is dangerously loose, that it could break the lip of the bridge right off. And secondly, it's just too high off the soundboard. When we're done, we'll be able to lower this a little bit, make a new saddle that'll be a good press fit, and this guitar will be 100% playable and 100% in tune. So as we get started here, because I'm going to be removing all these frets, I just wanted to point out that there were a couple of pieces missing here on the inlay. So we are going to have to take our chances here, because to correct this guitar and get it to behave, we're going to have to correct this neck to body junction and the trajectory of the string path. So we're going to heat these frets up, get them out, but like I said, as I'm getting started here, I don't know if some of these frets have been removed in the past at some point. Don't know, but there's definitely a couple of pieces of inlay missing here. So let's get started. We're going to heat. Well, I have chased that fall off down to the last 2 frets, and we did thin that inlay out considerably, lost a little bit of it, but I was actually surprised. It turned out pretty good. I've got my 2 pilot frets in there, so this is the 3rd and the 11th fret. Now when I put that straight edge on and I go up to the bridge, this is a much more reasonable distance. This saddle will come down considerably and we'll still be able to clear the frets.
And more importantly, we'll be able to calibrate this guitar perfectly end to end.
I have dug into my little stash of abalone and pearl, and I'm just mixing up that 5-minute epoxy. I'll add some black powdered coloring to that, and we'll put those two little pieces back into the fingerboard.
There are many things that we're going to cover with this incredible Foley guitar. Before we do, I want to just illustrate all of the calibration has been done. We have a compensated cantilevered bridge saddle and a compensated nut, and these are 12 to 53 strings. And we're going to quickly go through our proverbial tuning test, one string at a time. Now, because this guitar in particular is so lively, we definitely need those foam mutes in there to mute all of the sympathetic overtones, of which there are many. And the A. E.
There's just so many aspects of this Foley guitar to cover. Let's start with the bridge. You can see even with this wider saddle slot, we still needed to cantilever past the edge of that routed slot and then bring the B string almost to the back edge. As you just saw, it's perfectly in tune, but you got to give this guy credit. I mean, this is so delicate, this inlay. This is just the bridge. Of course, the pick guard has been inlaid. I would imagine that's probably tortoiseshell. And all of the joints on all of the abalone, phenomenal. There is just so much inlay. That alone is enough to take up a full video. So let's have a look at this fingerboard and let me explain what we ended up doing. There's our compensated nut. And this, I'll go as slow as I can here, is a look at the fingerboard inlay. This is the only spot right here where I had a little bit of burn through in order to correct that trajectory of the neck. And I'll explain that a little further in a second. I did have to replace these two pieces of the pedal as I cleaned out the
slot in preparation for the new frets, these two pieces chipped out and they were so thin that I decided to excavate a little bit and put two new pieces of pearl in. But that was the only part on the whole guitar that I had to replace the pearl. These are the beautiful engraved tuners. Look at the abalone on the side edge of the headstock. Here's the Foley logo in mother pearl. And this is the headstock inlay. That's our compensated nut. This is something else that you don't see very often. We have that abalone inlay underneath the binding on the edge of the neck. Of course, it goes down the heel and around the heel on the tip. 100-year-old Brazilian rosewood stock. Here's a close-up of the mitering at the tail block. Here's another look at the detail, the intersection of the sides and the heel. Pretty spectacular stuff. Absolutely gorgeous. I'll do my best to sort of explain what I needed to do to true up the neck along the tips of the frets from the first fret to the last. I had to kind of split the difference between correcting the fingerboard and then taking the rest of the real estate out of the crown of the fret. So when you look along the neck here, you can see there's still a little bit of a rise from here to here. But when I put the straight edge on there, it's dead straight. So the last part of the correction was taken out of the new frets, like I just said. The new frets are 90-55, so we had 55 thou to sort of play with to make that correction on the fingerboard. So now when I put that full-length straight edge and I slide up to the bridge, so Chris now will always have control over the action and of course the intonation as well, now that all these corrections have been made at this neck to body junction. The only fall off we have now is that very last fret. Again, you can see the sort of rise in the actual fingerboard, but I had to be very careful about this. I didn't want to lose any more inlay while I did the correction. That's why we split it up between the crown of the fret and the wood of the fingerboard itself. It looks like this is a high spot. Well, it's not, because, like I said, I had enough real estate in the crown of the fret to correct this whole area. As you saw earlier, when I put the straight edge on there, it touches every fret right up to the very last fret. That's the only fall off there is. Okay, we are going to bring this in to the house, and you will hear this Maton Australian system that's installed, as well as the sound of the actual guitar.